Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, Allah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa qul ja'a al-haq wa zahaqa al-batil. Inna al-batila kana zahuqa. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa halul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your brother Abu Talha Zahak. Welcome all of you to very interesting episode of Black Magic Busting series. As I promised you, my friends, in my last video, that inshallah my next video will be on how the magicians call upon jinn, how they invoke jinn. And in our last video, we saw how to recognize a black magician, how to recognize a person, whether he's a magician or not. Because in our society, we see people who claim to be Sheikh, Pir, Sufi Baba, and all that stuff. But when you go to the reality, when you get to the home truth, you find that those people are in reality black magicians who perform black magic and who are always involved in occult and mystical practices. Anyway, my dear friends, in this video, inshallah, I'll share with you how these magicians invoke jinn. But let's pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from these actions and from these methods, as these methods lead to kufr and disbelief and polytheism. And if any one of us commits any of these methods or ways, then he is no more a Muslim, he becomes a kafir, he becomes a disbeliever. And my dear friends, the jinn and the magician, they coordinate based on a deal. They make a deal, and based on this deal, they coordinate with each other. I think you know about how the contract killers work. For example, person A wants to kill person B. He goes to contract killer. He pays him money and says that I want person B to be killed. So the contract killer, he does not go physically, but he sends his subordinates to kill person B. In the same way, in the world of black magic, the magician calls the chief jinn, the chief of the tribe of the jinns. He calls upon him, he praises him, he commits all forms of disbelief and polytheism. And then a deal is made between the chief jinn and the magician. And the chief jinn sends the subordinate jinns to carry out the purposes of the black magic. Because in many of the cases I saw with my own eyes that when the jinn was asked to leave the body, he said that I can't, I'm compelled because I'm forced by the magician and my chief. So this is all happens in the world of black magic. Black magic cannot be performed without the involvement of jinn. Jinn and magician both are involved in black magic. If you remove jinn, black magic can be performed. So they have certain ways and certain rituals and practices through which they coordinate with the chief jinn. So I'm going to share with you those rituals and the methods they use to call the jinn. But pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from these methods. The first method is called as al-iqsam, in which the magician gets into a dark room, a private kind of thing. He gets into the dark room and he swears in the name of the chief jinn. He says, "Oh chief jinn, please come, please come." He praises him constantly, and he wears filthy clothes and he gets into the impure state of the body. For example, he commits sexual intercourse or he masturbates and then gets into the impure state of the body, and then he starts his rituals. So when he starts his rituals, he lights up fire, and in the fire he puts bad odor or good smell based on the subject, based on their requirement. For example, he got the requirement to create differences and divisions between husband and wife. In that case, he puts bad odor. And if he wants to create unconditional love between husband and wife, between two friends, between two partners, between two lovers, Based on the requirement, he puts good smell, or he burns incense sticks. So after a while, he praises the chief jinn. He calls him again and again. Then a phantom appears before him in the form of a dog or a snake, and he communicates to the jinn. He dictates what to be done and what not to be done. And in most of these cases, he takes the sweaty garment of the person on whom the magic has to be done, the patient or the victim. He takes the sweaty garment, he ties the knot on the sweaty garment and says, this has to be done to this person, this has to happen, this has to happen. So that's the reason in my last video I told that if anyone asks you or requests you to get this sweaty garment of you or anyone else, then he's a magician. The reason is this, that he uses the sweaty garment to perform the black magic. So this is all happens in al-iqsam. The phantom appears, the snake or the dog, the shadow of the snake or the dog comes, and he talks to the shadow or the phantom. And in most of these cases, he hears a voice. Okay, what do you want me to do? Your wish is my command. And then the magician says that this has to be performed, this has to be done, this has to be taken care of. So this is the first method they use to call the jinn and talk to the jinn. Now the second method, which is called as a-zabiha. They use this method as a way of slaughtering the animal in the name of the chief jinn. So they ask you or the person who visits the magician, he tells the person to get an animal with certain specifications, with certain features. For example, black crow, or black sheep, or black ram, or black pigeon, or an owl. They specifically ask for black color because jinn like black color. Some people say the reason is black color absorbs heat, and jinn are made of smokeless fire, and that's the reason they like the black color, and that's the reason the magicians ask to get the black color animal. So they ask for black color animal, or any animal with certain specifications, and they slaughter it in the name of the chief jinn. The magicians pretend to slaughter it in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They may say that Bismillah Allahu Akbar, but in reality they slaughter it in the name of the jinn. And they ask you or the person who visits them to put the carcass, the dead body of the animal, at a ruined place, or in a well, or in a forest, or in at a place where people don't usually pass by, because these are the places where jinn reside. These are the homes of the jinn. So these jinns go and consume the body there, and then they come to the magician, and magician dictates them what to be done. This is the second method. Now the third method, which is called as as-sufliya, and this is the worst form of disbelief, and more the perfect the magician is, that the jinns come at the beck and call of the magician. In this method, magician wears Quran on his food. He wears it on his food, and he walks into the toilet. He sits in the toilet, and he does all the incantations and the chanting and praising of the jinn, and then he comes back to his room, and then the jinn comes to him and talk to him. And the jinn will ask the magician in as-sufliya to perform incest, sexual intercourse with mother, sister, or daughter, and even homosexuality with the devotees, or homosexuality with someone who is at home. So more the magician becomes disbeliever, more he gets into the ditch of disbelief, the jinn helps him. This is the third method. Now the fourth method, which is called as an-najasa. In this, the magician writes the Quran with the menses discharge, or the dirty fluids, filthy fluids, for example precum or semen, or the menses discharge, or post-birth blood. So they use this blood of the women who come to the magicians, the devotees. They use this blood to write the Quranic ayats, and this is how they please the jinn. And later the jinn come to them and talk to them, and they carry out the task. The fifth method they use is called as al-tankis. In this, they anagrammatize the words of the Holy Quran. For example, my name is Abu Talha. So Talha, the reverse of the word Talha is Ahlat Uba. Ahlat Uba. So, for example, I have to say Allah, then the magicians say Halala. Anagrammatize, reverse. And there was a person in my town, Mahbub Nagar, who used to recite complete Surah Yasin in an anagrammatized way. He used to recite it completely reverse way. And this is how he used to do the magic, the black magic. So writing them backwards is called as anagrammatizing. So the magicians use this technique, this way, to read the Quran, and this is how the jinn gets pleased with them, and they come at their beck and call to execute the orders and the task. The sixth method they use is called as at-tanjim. In this, the magicians believe that gods descend from certain stars. So they wait for those stars to happen on a particular date, on a particular time, and they believe that these stars appear once in a year, and they wait for that time, and they get into water up to the waist or up to the neck, and they look at the star, and they praise the star, and they chant the praising of the star, and they believe that the gods descend from the star. But in reality, in Islam, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created stars for beautifying sky and for navigation purpose. It has nothing to do with the fortune. It has nothing to do with our fate or anything of that kind. And in fact, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if anyone gets into astrology and if anyone learns astrology, then he has learned a branch of magic. And if he gets more into that, then he has learned more magic. So one has to refrain from studying about the movement of stars and the calculation of fate and the fortune. And people even believe that if this star comes into this circle, then your baby will be good and your baby will be bad. So people believe in stars, and they believe that it all happens due to the stars. But stars are just a creation of Allah, beautiful creation of Allah, and those poor creation doesn't even know that people worship them. But in reality, jinn come when they praise the stars, and they ask the magicians what to be done and what not to be done. Anyway, the seventh method, which is called as al-kafu, in this the magician calls underaged boy or girl, especially those who haven't reached puberty, and he puts a flower oil or blue ink in the left palm, and then he asks the boy to continuously look into it. And when he continuously looks into it, the magician asks, "What do you see?" The boy says, "I see two people sitting in my drawing room." The magician says, "Ask one of them to come. Tell him that Baba Fakhruddin is calling him." Then the boy says, "Baba Fakhruddin is calling you. Come on." And the person comes. So the boy sees moving objects in the drop of the ink or the flower oil. And it all happens due to jinn. The jinns play and fool the people. And this method is usually used to find the lost objects. For example, you lost gold items. So people reach out to these magicians, and they do this method of al-kafu to call jinn and to carry out the task of black magic. An eighth method, which is called as al-athar. In this, the magician asks you sweaty garment, and then he ties knot on that, and he recites Surah Takathur in a very loud way. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر. Then he goes down, he goes silent, and then he rises again, and then he gives a jerk to the handkerchief, and if the knots, the distance between the knots increases, then he says that you're affected with jinn. If it decreases, then he says that you've got evil eye. So all the things happen with the coordination of jinn, and these are the 8 methods they use to call the jinn, and they have multiple methods. They have multiple methods, and they keep upgrading their methods. But the fundamentals of their ways and methods are these 8, and based on these 8, they keep increasing and upgrading themselves. They have multiple methods to call jinn. And more the person is into disbelief and polytheism, jinns come at his beck and call. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't help us, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't take us in his refuge, then it's impossible to be away from these evil creatures. And my dear friends, I'm narrating to you all these facts from the book written by Abdul Salam Bali, because in my last video people asked me that what's your reference, what's your reference point. My reference point is the book written by Sheikh Abdul Salam Bali, The Sword Against Black Magic and Evil Magicians, and this is the best book on this subject. And some of the incidents are based on my personal experience. I saw with my own eyes and experience, because I used to go to every kind of magician, and even those magicians would come to our house, and we have experienced this in our life. Inshallah, in my next video, I'll share with you the types of magic. The magic which is done to create differences between husband and wife, the magic which is done to create unconditional love, the magic which is done to make a person impotent, the magic which is done to create to block the marriage. So these are some of the types of magic which are done by magicians, and people go to them. So my whole purpose is to bust the black magic and let the people know the reality of the black magic, and let the people safeguard themselves from the evil magicians and the black magic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. Inshallah, in my next video, I'll share with you the types of magic, and we'll also see in the further episodes of this black magic busting series how to cure black magic, inshallah. Keep praying, and if you like this video, please share it with your friends and family, and please share it on your Facebook page and through your Gmail contacts, and let the people know about this subject. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.